Little intro about Allan. We have Allan Breidenbach is a 30-year veteran of the construction industry. He is currently president of Wick Buildings and previously the CEO of US Fence Solutions. Allan's roots are in Wisconsin, and early in his career he was a vice president for Wisconsin Building Supplies, headquartered right here in Green Bay. Today Allan will be speaking about improving profitability and customer satisfaction when doing business with a commodity market. Please welcome Allan Breidenbach.
Am I on? Yep, sounds like I am. All right. Well, good morning. What a treat to be able to kick off the day. Hopefully catch you before your breakfast settles too much into your stomach and you decide you want to start taking a little bit of a nap. If you do need to nap, that's fine. Just don't snore. All right. I get to talk about a fun topic today. I get to talk about profitability. For all of you, I hope it's a situation where you think about it every day. You think about it in terms of your projects. You think about how you want to attack it and how you want to approach it. In the news, I guess I would say we've all seen nothing but good news, right? Everything's going great. We have reason to believe that 2023 is going to be as good as any year we've ever had. I don't think I'm reading the same news if that's what you think you're seeing. Here's the good news. The good news is there is still a lot of opportunity out there for all of us. And it's all about trying to figure out what does that look like and how do we do it. The good news for us is, in a macro perspective, there still is tremendous demand for our product. I think we all would agree that what we saw going on during 2021, 22 was that there was an unsustainable demand combined with supply chain problems, and one created the other. So that which is unsustainable is what? Unsustainable. So we have to figure out what does the new reality look like. And I think what you're going to find is it's going to go back to things we already know. And so my goal for today in the next 35, 40 minutes here is to hopefully remind you of a few things, point you in some directions that we've seen some good success and things that I know have worked very well for a number of our builders. So we're going to talk about building profitably. So what I want to talk about really is about 5 key things here. Is first of all, identifying your target. By show of hands, let me ask you this. When you quote a project, do you have an idea of what your end profitability should be? Okay. Who can tell me the difference between markup and margin? I don't want to put anybody on the spot here, but I'll give you the definition. Markup is a term that's typically used in retail, right? If I have something that costs $1 and I put a 50% markup on it, what would I sell it for? Oh, there's math early in the morning. Come on, guys, get loose. I thought I heard it. $1.50. That is correct, sir. If we have door prizes, Doug, let's get one to that young man. $1.50 is correct, right? $1, add 50% to it, it's now $1.50. But your margin is not 50%. What is your margin? Your margin is you made 50 cents on that sale, but it was 50 cents out of $1.50, which is a third, so your margin would be 33%. Everybody follow what I'm saying on that? Your markup is 50%, but your margin is 33%. The number one mistake I see people making is they don't understand the difference between markup and margin. They will use those words interchangeably. They think they're a synonymous phrase or a synonym. They are not. You cannot spend markup. You spend margin. So when you think about your goals, make sure you're defining what that looks like. From a math perspective, there's nothing wrong with taking your costs and using a markup to arrive at what you want it to be. But don't think you're going into something. I hear people say this all the time. Oh, I had a 50% margin on that. I can't understand how I lost money. And then they're really talking in markup. Okay? So we want to identify the target appropriately. What are we trying to accomplish? And we need to know that going into it. Okay? Second thing is we want to answer the why. Now, this is not an economic question. This is a question about why somebody should do business with you. I talk about this a lot at Wick. For those on the Wick team who are here, they've heard me say this, why Wick? But I would challenge you to answer that same question. Why should I do business with you? That is the unspoken question, sometimes spoken question, that customers will ask. So if I may ask, what is a reason why somebody would do business with you? How many do we have that are builders here who actually build buildings? Okay, perfect. If I may, your first name?
Paul.
Hi, Paul. Why would somebody do business with you?
Good reputation.
Okay, so reputation would be an excellent thing. Why is that important to a customer? A good reputation, what does that mean to them? Security, peace of mind, I know I'm going to be taken care of. Those are important things, right? Okay. What's another reason, where are my other builders here? What's another reason why somebody might do business with you?
If it's local, like local, you're part of the community.
Sure, supporting the local community. Hey, I want to keep my dollars here. I don't want it to go off to some corporation that's across the country or even across the ocean, right? I like to spend local, right? Because I know then if I'm spending local for you, those dollars will stay here, okay? That has value, okay? What else? What's another reason?
Feel comfortable dealing with the person that you're dealing with.
Oh, I love that. You, right? Yes, the trust in you. These are things, so now when you start talking about buying locally, you start talking about having good reputation, you start talking about you, these are unique, distinct reasons why somebody should do business with you. Will people pay for that? Yes, they will. They will. But only if you tell them. Only if you help them understand. Only if you understand their why. It's not why are they building the building. That's important. There's no question. You want to understand its purpose, its use, its design, and what it's going to do and how well it's going to age for them over time. But they need to understand why they should do business with you. I think we would agree a piece of steel, for the most part, is a piece of steel. A piece of lumber is a piece of lumber. But the intrinsic value, the non-material values that go into that project, we're going to talk about more, are really key. Answering that why. I will tell you, and we'll get into this in a little bit more detail too, this is the single biggest mistake that I see people make. They don't have the ability to articulate why somebody should do business with them. What do most people do when they get out to a job site? Hey, can I give you a number on this? And if you go right to that right away and you don't understand, they don't understand, your number is meaningless, they don't have enough information, so what are they left to do? They're going to compare you solely by price. That's a missed opportunity. Put costs where costs belong. I love this. There was a phrase that was being used at Wick for years and years and years. Put all your costs into a bucket and then smear your profit like peanut butter over the whole thing. I don't know what peanut butter has to do with profitability, but that's what they said. Kind of makes sense, right? If I look at all my costs, I figure, okay, what are my materials? What's my estimated labor? What's my permit cost? You know, if I put that in a bucket and I put my markup or my margin on top of that, that should be reasonable, right? We'll talk about that a little bit more. Price to the market. The exact example I just gave is not pricing to the market. What does pricing to the market mean? Does it mean you have to be the cheapest? Is that what I'm saying? Say no. Yes, no is correct. Although that's the most Wisconsin phrase ever. Yeah, no. No, it doesn't mean you have to be the cheapest. But what it does mean is your pricing has to move with the markets. And we're going to talk about what that means relative to commodities and what's there. You want to de-emphasize your cost, but price to market. And I'll explain the distinction of what that looks like. And then the last thing is, we got to validate. What does that mean? Big words here on a Wednesday morning at 9:05 here.
Ability as a buyer.
Yes. Very good. Actually, I wasn't thinking about it in that way, but that's right. Validate your buyer, right? You want to make sure that they have the ability to do this and so that they can follow through on what they're doing. But if we're looking at our pricing strategy and we're trying to be profitable, validate in its broadest sense means, like what you're saying, measure, right? Take a measure of them. Do they have the ability to perform? And did the job perform like I expected it to? Why is that important? How many guys are out there, when you get done with a job, do you break it down and then say, okay, I made this much revenue, which means what I actually collected. It does not mean what the contract price was, but what you collected and how long it took you to collect. What was your net revenue, less all your expenses as you go down, to find out what that bottom line number is. We've got to validate that that number is within an acceptable range for what you priced it to. We'll talk about why that's critical. So, where is the profit? The profit is hiding inside that deal. Is the profit in there simply based on the cost of goods? There's really three key areas where you're going to find profit. Profit's going to be inside the experience, it'll be in your non-commodity areas, and it will be in your overhead costs. Now that sounds very strange, doesn't it? How is there profit inside overhead? Overhead is supposed to be a burden, isn't it? Oh, you hear this stuff all the time. Oh, the business didn't do well because he put too much overhead on it. Business didn't fail because he had overhead. Business failed because they didn't put a value to that overhead and then sell to that. That's a little bit of a semantic argument. We can talk about that a little bit more. But let's talk about the first thing. Let's talk about the experience. What is the experience that you want your customer to have? If we can talk about the unique value proposition of your experience or your ability to buy locally or your valued reputation or liking you, is that tangible? Can be. Can be. That's a fair point. I would argue in some ways that the materials themselves are what are tangible. The end result is what's there. It's the building. But what is the experience that you gave them? How many of you ever talked to a customer about a project that they've done, and you say, oh, I see you've done this over here. What was that? It looks great. What was that like? Oh my God. Can I speak like a contractor for a second? Oh, what a shit show. How many people have that experience? The end result might be just fine. But the experience, that management of that expectation, that is where the money is. Because if you give them a good experience, could we agree? You're actually giving them something that is tangible. It's a scary deal, buying a big project or a big building. It's scary for a business. It's scary for a customer or a homeowner. And what is it that they're afraid of? Any ideas?
Not getting what they think they're purchasing.
Certainly not getting what they think they're purchasing, which by extension would be they're afraid of making a mistake, right? They're afraid of looking foolish, which is a bigger deal than most people realize. They want to make sure that there's enough trust in you that you're going to execute and deliver on what they think they're buying. And your ability to execute on that, your ability to provide peace of mind, your ability to do more than just slap wood and steel together to make a building is where your profit is. But it will not be valued by the customer unless you explain it. How many of your customers do you think know what you do to get a project done? Not very many. I would tell you nobody does. Only you know what really goes into that project and what's all involved. You'll sometimes see these memes that go around that will talk about, hey, you think you can do this on your own? You know, you've got your summer off and you can build this deck or you can build this addition or you can do these sorts of things. Yeah, that's great because you're charging me so much money. Perfect. Let's start. You need to go buy $2,500 worth of tools. Well, I don't want to buy 25. Yep, and then we got to get to the lumberyard or our supplier at 6 o'clock in the morning to make sure that we have the delivery set up and that we're getting what we need. And oh, by the way, you need to talk to the engineers and make sure that the design they put together for the building is exactly what you were looking for. And don't forget not only local codes, but think about snow loading, and now think about where you're putting the openings in the building, because if you put it in the end wall versus the side wall, you have to understand what that's going to do to wind loading, and you're going to need extra bracing that goes on with that. Oh, by the way, how thick of the concrete pad we're going to do. And have you thought about road restrictions? What are we going to do with that? Oh, by the way, when you're going for financing, we need to make sure that this thing is up to code. Otherwise, it won't approve for financing. Oh, you want a living area in there and you're going to put a deck in there. Okay, well, then we have to be able to account for that dead load, and then we want to make sure that there's not a lot of Do you see what I'm saying? Now, the reverse of that is giving them the experience by saying, let me help you understand something. Anybody can come out here and give you a building. And most of the time it'll be okay. Anybody know how many people will buy a building solely on price? Or a product? It doesn't have to be a building. What percentage do you think buy solely on price? Because there are people out there who will buy only on price.
30%.
I'm sorry? 30%. I'll make this easy. Higher or lower?
Higher.
Higher than that?
Lower.
So you're saying he's high? Yes, he is. How high?
He's high by 25%.
You're really pretty close. They say it's somewhere between 8 and 11%. Yep. So let's take the high number of that, 11%. 89% of people will buy for a different reason. It's because of the experience. It's because of the trust and the reputation. It's the ability to buy local. It's the ability to say, I like this guy. I want to do business with him. The experience is where profit is. Now, second thing, non-commodity areas. For purposes of this discussion, let's make sure we align. What is a commodity? Lumber is a commodity. What else? Arguably, he said brick and mortar. Maybe. Steel certainly is, right? We know those are the two big ones that we deal with because it is a product that is exchanged and traded, and that market goes up and it goes down. Doors and windows would be finished goods. I would argue those are not a commodity. Your big ones are really anything that you can buy in sort of its raw state and then you can make into something else. If you buy a door or if you buy a laminated post or something, yes, there's commodities that go into it, but I would argue it's a finished good because nobody's trading windows. But they are trading steel, they are trading lumber. Now, why is that important? Why are we saying there's profit in the non-commodity areas, which might be what you're thinking about here in terms of windows and where there's opportunity? People have some sense, as ironic as it might be, of what's going on with commodities because they'll hear about this, right? How many of you get this question? Well, what's going on in the lumber market? Or I see something in the news. What's going on? Oh, it's going up. Oh, it must be. Yeah. Okay, you hear that. Oh, I hear it's coming down. This must be a great time to buy. But your non-commodity areas are where you're going to make money. I'll give you an example. When I was at Wisconsin Building Supply, pardon me, we had a customer we couldn't get. We couldn't get him. It didn't matter what we did, we couldn't get him. And he built big, big shacks. You know, this is back in the, how do you say it now? But it's between 2000 and the aughts, would that be right? Yes, 2007, 2008. He's building $1.5 million, $1.8 million, huge, huge places. And we'd have this whole quote. We were quoting everything, the sticks, the lumber, the concrete, the windows, the doors, the trim, all of it. And he'd flip through our quote and he'd look at it and he'd put it down on the desk and we could never get his business. And his son that worked in the business was there and I bet I was in his office 6 to 8 times. And I never forget what he said to me. We're walking out after not getting the business for about the 7th time. And he goes, no, we had a good relationship, so it was okay, it didn't hurt my feelings. He goes, hey, dumbass. I knew he was talking to me. I've been married for some time. He says, do you have any idea what my dad's looking at in your quote? Oh, he's looking at the bottom line. No. Didn't give a rip about the bottom line. Well, now you have my attention. What's he looking at? Particle board stair treads. He was going through the quote and he's looking for particle board stair treads. Why? His belief was, if your price is right on particle board stair treads, your price must be right on everything else, because if they're ripping you off on particle board stair treads, then they're ripping you off every place else. What's that?
That was his theory.
That was his theory. Company's still in business, still doing well. Particle board stair treads, I'll never forget. But my point being is, in your non-commodity areas, and I would say he was a pretty savvy buyer in the sense that he understood this is where you can find margin. Because in his houses, particle board stair treads, he'd have about $2,500 worth of particle board stair treads, and we had about an 80% margin in there. So he wanted to talk about that because he already knew we got skinny on commodities. Because we knew he could compare a 2x4 to a 2x4, or a 2x6 to a 2x6. He could do that. He could get a quote from one person to another. There's no difference between a 2x6 from one lumberyard and another. In fact, it probably comes from the same mill. If you ever look at the wrapping on it, there is no difference. So in the non-commodity areas, I give you this example to say, one time in 30 years have I had anybody look in this area. But that's where your opportunities are, in the experience and the non-commodity areas. And then the last thing is, let's talk about your overhead costs. What goes into overhead costs? Give me an example of overhead. Well, you got to keep the lights on, right? So are we suggesting that there's lights at an office? Okay, we got an office. What else? Oh, you got to have equipment, right? What else? HR. What's part of HR? What goes into that? What would be good for a customer by having HR? Oh, amen. Right? We're compliant on safety. We practice good safety. We have the right safety equipment. We have people who taxes are being held. They are insured. They are insured. They are insured. Big one. We're giving you a list of things that most people would view as overhead. You've got your competition who goes, oh, I don't have all that overhead that that guy has. You don't want to pay for that stuff? Oh, don't you? Let me see if I get this straight. You don't want employees that are drug screened. You want them using crappy tools. You don't want them practicing good safety. And if they get hurt, you want all the responsibility. Is this what you're telling me? Who in their right mind would say yes to that? But there is opportunity for margin. Why? People know the price of a 2x4 and a 2x6, but they don't know what your rent is. They don't know what your insurance costs are. They don't know what your tools and equipment cost. They might know an individual part and a piece. But if you're not building in some overhead expense into your business and into your quotes, you're making a mistake. Some people do it inside a general contracting fee. Some people will do it in terms of the markups or margins that they put in there to account for it, but you should account for it. It is not meaningless. The worst phrase you can have is, oh, it's a cost of doing business. Yes, it is a cost of doing business that your customer should pay for as long as they recognize the value of it. Does that make sense? All right. I kind of like this quote. You know, it's kind of a sister quote to the idea of, you know, when it's all said and done, more is said than done. How do you get started doing this? Start doing it. Find one thing. So let's talk about it. Where do I start? This talks about basically the whole concept of what we laid out here. Goals. Define your objective. What is it that you want, need, or expect to make on that? How do you do that? I can't possibly know that. I don't know what they're willing to pay. I got that. But if you don't go into it with an idea of saying, this is what I expect to make, this is what I'm worth, you're flying blind. So define, what does that look like? What are you willing to commit? What is it that the commitment that you're willing to make to this project, to your business, to yourself, to make more money? Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Right? What are you willing to do? What commitment? Paul, is that correct?
Yes.
Paul, here is the commitment I'm willing to make to you to make sure that you have a successful project. I'm going to make sure that I get you the best products possible. I'm going to make sure that we execute this on time and on budget. And I will make sure that everybody who is here operates safely to make sure that you're not put at risk and your lifetime investment here is not put at risk. Is that important to you?
Very.
Okay? That's my commitment. And my other commitment is this. I hate this phrase. Oh my God, I've heard it so long. Don't sell a job to stay busy. Leave that for the other guy. We have some competition in our market where they start off the year, they go on sale. They start off selling in January with an 11% discount, and then February it's a 9% discount, and March it's 7%, with the idea that they want to build a big backlog going into the year. And around this time of year, we start hearing, well, I got a better price from the other guy. Yep. Do you want to match it? Nope. Because we know they're going to do what? They're giving up all of their capacity at a lower number. They're not valuing what they do, so why should I? And ultimately, why should the customer? Lastly, is it smart? Now, many of you may have heard this. This is an older phrase. It's been around for a long time. SMART goals. Anybody familiar with that? It's an acronym. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time frame or timing. So when you think about the goals that you're trying to have, the objectives you're trying to have, here's the difference. If I said, I want to make $1 million, is that a SMART goal? Well, is it specific? Arguably, right? Is it measurable? Yeah, I think I could count to 1 million. Is it achievable? I don't know. I don't have enough information, right? Is it realistic? Once again, I don't have enough information. And the big one, what's the timing? Hey, look, if you make 20 grand a year and work for 50 years, you made $1 million. I don't think that's what we're talking about. But if I sat there and said, I want to make $1 million in the next 2 years by selling $3 million worth of business, netting 10% on that money, I'm going to generate this many leads, close this many deals, this can be done because I have a track record of it. Is that a more of a SMART goal? Guys, you got to do it. I would tell you the single biggest one is T. Anything that you do, make sure you put timing on it. Because when you bleed on time, your profitability goes down. What does that mean? How many of you have been on a project that finished a week later than it was supposed to? A month later? 6 months later? Oh, I'm the only one? You guys are great. What am I talking to you for? A year later. Thank you, an honest man right here. 3 years. Woo-hoo. Make any money on that? No. Sometimes you keep kicking that one down the road for a little bit, don't you? Because you're like, oh God, if I close this thing out, it's going to be ugly. But the timing is a really critical part of this, guys. Okay, why? Define your why. Come up with 3 different reasons why somebody should do business with you. And it can't be product. Does that make sense? Do not come up with a reason. And don't get me wrong. People expect you to provide good quality products and good service. That's the barrier to entry. They expect that. If you're not delivering that, you've got bigger issues. But beyond that, how are you different and how do they benefit? If you make a statement and you can't answer this simple question, so what, you haven't explained what it is that you need to be doing. Let me give you an example. We already did it here today. You talked about you, right? They're getting me. That's a unique value proposition. By the way, big spoon-fed clue, you already have one of your three. It's you. Now, the question is, let me put you on the spot for a second. Let me ask your name. Jerry. I'm Alan, by the way. Nice to meet you. Why, so what? So I get to work with you, Jerry. So what? What am I getting for that? Oh, we're not going to talk about product, remember. We're talking about you. Why does that matter to me? What do you bring to the table that the other guy doesn't?
Trust in me.
Hey, trust. How do you demonstrate that?
I will do what I say.
Oh, I love that. You know the number one way to make money on any project? That's a couple of things. Answer your phone, show up on time. Third one is keep a clean job site. These are inside tips. Customers have no clue what the nailing schedule is over a door opening. They have no idea what the engineering specs are, but they do know if you answer your phone, they do know if you respect their time, and they do know if you respect their job site by keeping it clean. Find 3 reasons why somebody should do business with you that is different and have a different conversation than what the competition is having. Don't let the conversation be about what's the tensile strength of your steel and what is the polymer that you put into your paint to make. I mean, you can have that conversation, but it's a losing conversation. They're going to gloss over, they're going to get lost in the weeds, and it's going to come down to what? Price. Okay? Costs. Are you working in a business or on your business? An old phrase, but I love it. Let's talk about a difference between working in the business and working on the business. When you hear that phrase, what do you think it means when I say working in the business? I'm sorry? Okay. I think, yes. I'm going to say in and on, just I'm going to reverse them, right? I would argue today you're working on your business because you're investing into it, you're continuing your education, you're getting better at what you do. Working in the business is simply the day-to-day blocking and tackling, which is critically important. I'm not suggesting that. But if you just put your head down and say, I'm going to outwork this, there's no margin in that. You got to think about what you're doing. Think about how you develop your business. You got to think about what is your best compensated activity. If one of Jerry's distinctions here and why working with him makes sense is that he is the best trimmer in the state, in the region, in the country. Nobody does trim work like Jerry. Where should he spend his time? Trimming. What do a lot of guys do? Here, let me show you how to do this trim. Da, 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 da. I got to go run this lead over here. I got to go do this. I got to do that. Your single greatest strength is now the one thing that you're not doing. Play to your strengths. Do you measure the true cost of the project? What do you think I mean when I say true cost? What would be some of the fake costs? No, that's not the comparison. We've talked about some of those projects that go on and on and on. Let's give you a simple example. What do you think it costs you when you don't get paid on time? Any idea? Well, look at what interest rates are right now. If you had to go borrow the money to cover your expenses for the receivable that you haven't gotten, it's going to cost you about 6%. That's about 0.5% per month. So if you're owed $100,000 and you don't get paid for a month, what did that cost you? Oh, more math. What? I'm sorry? About 500, right? About 500. Because if you take 6% over a year, that would be $6,000 divided by 12. Call it $500. But I like 600 even more because there's a pain in the ass factor that goes with that. The true cost of your business is what you need to measure, which is inclusive of your time, your energy, your cash flow, your relationships, permitting, plan sets, negotiation with vendors, delivery, returns, job site cleanup, dumpster fees. I'm sure we could all sit and think about 25 or 30 more, right? Safety harnesses, tools, your equipment rental. God, how many guys forget to put equipment rental into their jobs or don't estimate properly on how long they need the equipment? Know the true cost of your project so that you can price it appropriately. Don't throw anything in. Pricing, price to the market. Here's what market means. Market means what the market will bear. For example, if you go into a big box retailer or a professional lumberyard and you see what a 2x4 or a 2x6 costs, and you can buy it cheaper, should you sell it to them for a cheaper price? Let me give you an example. Let's say the market is pricing a 2x4 at $2. And you would normally say, okay, I'm going to mark up my materials 20%. So I'm going to sell that 2x4 on the project for $2.40. But wait, I've got a supplier who won't sell it to me for $2. They'll sell it to me for $1. How many guys do you think mark up that dollar than just their same 20%? Be honest. A lot. None of you guys, because you're the smarter people. You're here working on your business today. But there's two things that go on, right? If I have a 20% markup on $1, I'm selling it for $1.20. I made 20 cents on that board. If I have a $2 cost and I sell it with a 20% markup, I made 40 cents on it. So how many guys sit there and say, well, geez, I made the same markup that I usually do. Why didn't I make any money? Guys, get comfortable with the idea. If you get a pricing advantage because of how you buy, do not give that to the customer. Don't pass that on. If you can buy it for $1, everybody else is buying it at $2 and they're selling it at $2.40, you sell it at $2.40. That is pricing to the market. And if you make $1.40 on a board that cost you $1, good for you. That is not unfair. Because if you don't do that, all the other surprises that are going to come up despite our best efforts, subsurface soil conditions, equipment breaks down, guys quit, the permit cost was 3 times what you expected. Whatever it might be, those costs that you have to eat, you have to make them up someplace else. You can't start with a net zero to say, I'm only going to make this, and then all your costs come out of that. You have to be able to build up from that and have some protection. So price to the market, price to replacement. This is a very good thing, particularly when you're dealing in commodities. What does this mean?
Cost average.
I'm sorry?
Cost average.
Cost average is, close, right? Jeremy, that's pretty close. I mean, the idea basically is to say, look, if I'm going to sell a project and I am sitting on inventory that cost me $1, but I know now when I have to go out and buy it, it's going to be $2, I need to put my cost in at $2. The reason being is if I put it at $1 and I sell it for that $1.20, now I got to go buy it at $2, I just lost 80 cents. And I'm sure the customer would be very sympathetic when you come back and say, gee, the market went up on me. Always price to replacement. And that may mean that if the market crests and starts to come down, that you will price it a little bit lower than what you want. But the more you do that, the more margin you will make. And then adjust your margins depending on the category. Do not price across the board the same markup on everything. You want to adjust that as you go through and you start saying, okay, What's tying up my cash? What is something that I can get paid for? So for example, you can take lower margins on your commodity products if your supplier delivers them and they give you 30-day terms and you're going to collect from your customer and you're going to get that done, you can pay that. But if you have to pay all your insurance up front, that's your cash that's being tied up, you should put more margin on that because you've already incurred the expense. Does that make sense? If you can spend cash, you can take lower margins. If you've invested cash, you need to get higher margins. And then lastly, measure what you're doing. When you go into a project and you look at your pricing and you have your sworn construction statement, used to be on paper on a clipboard, but now it's in an Excel spreadsheet. For most people, it's in their head. But you should have an idea writing down, this is what I expect to make, because you will do this math in your head. Well, I was supposed to make 10 grand on this project, but I had the dumpster issue, and then I had the permit issue, and okay, I'll make 8,500. Oh, a little bit later, oh, I ran into this over here. Oh, the guy quit on me, and so then I had to hire the new guy, and I got to pay him $2 an hour more, so now I'm going to make 7,500. Then you get to the end of it, and you made 4 grand, and you go, hey, not too bad, I made 4 grand. Measure what you're looking at. Take a look at the beginning, take a look in the middle. How many of you have been in the middle of a project and you go, hey, I've got 50% of it done and I've collected 90% of my money? Make sure you measure in the middle and you know what you're dealing with. And at the end, make sure you review. So in summary, guys, your profitability is dependent on these 5 things. Identify and define your goals. What is it that you want to make? What is it that you need to make? What is it you expect? Answer the why. Put costs where they belong. Price to the market, not to your costs. And lastly, make sure you validate or measure what you're doing. If you're not keeping score, nobody else is. Nobody cares about your profitability unless you do. So thanks, guys. Questions? I think I have 1 minute for questions, if there's any.
All right.
Oh, you guys are so easy this morning. All right. Well, I wish you all a very happy, prosperous 2023. Thank you for being part of the association. It's a growing entity. I know Doug is putting a lot of time and effort into this, so I want to thank you for the opportunity today and wish you all very good luck.